Go inside the Crimson Tide. Tider Insider TV with Rodney Orr and Gary Harris.
Well, here we go on Tider Insider TV for Tuesday, June 29th. Crimson Tide running back Mark Ingram has been named the SEC's Male Athlete of the Year, the Roy Kramer Award winner. The winners were announced today, male and female, and are voted on by the league's athletics directors. Ingram, of course, was Alabama's first ever Heisman Trophy winner and set a single-season rushing mark with 1,658 yards. And Nick Saban's statue on the Walk of Champions might not be ready until mid-season. The university's director of athletic facilities, Thad Turnipseed, says they're about 65% completed, but they don't want to rush the job. He said the first two renditions of the Saban statue were rejected partly because the face and hair weren't right. A memo presented to the Board of Trustees earlier this month had proposed unveiling the statue between August 13th and August 20th. Keep in mind, that could still happen, but it is not likely at this point. Well, good evening, everybody, and welcome in to Tider Insider TV, presented by Buffalo Rock Bottling Company. Tonight, we're enjoying sun-kissed orange soda. I'm Gary Harris, joined as always by Rodney Orr, founder of TiderInsider.com. We've got football recruiting news for you in just a moment. But first, Rodney, we're going to begin with a big basketball commitment. And I mean big, as in the form of 7 feet 1 inches tall, Carl Engstrom from Sweden, committed to Coach Grant over the weekend. He's 250 pounds. Now, you're watching some video of him that we got from YouTube. Now, Rodney, when we talk about this young man, let's keep in mind that he's been playing basketball for about 14 months. Before that, he was a national handball champion. So he's a skilled athlete, and you can see some of this skill. He can touch the rim without jumping. I mean, a lot of potential. Now, obviously, he's raw, but as an Alabama basketball follower, I'm excited about this pickup.
Well, you just don't find 7-footers plus every day, Gary. And again, you watch him shoot the ball right-handed. He obviously holds dribbled the ball really well, left-handed as well. So he's athletic. You can see him there. And you mentioned the fact that he was a great handball player, and you know that takes a tremendous amount of athleticism. Absolutely, it does. Now, if you're wondering about 7-footers in Alabama basketball, and I didn't research this, but you know I followed it for a long time, I can only think of one, and that was Rob Cornegy that played for Wimp Sanderson back in the mid-1980s. He was a transfer, I think, from St. John's, and he didn't do much. Yeah. So hopefully Engstrom will be a better player than Rob Cornegy. There have been, I know, a couple of 6'10", 6'11" players, but as far as anybody listed at 7 feet or more, he is the only one that comes to mind. If you know of one, you can email me or call us here on the program tonight. Now, before Engstrom's commitment, we caught up last week with Alabama head coach Anthony Grant and asked him about how the Tide's basketball recruiting has gone so far this offseason.
I mean, we're pleased. I think we're moving in the right direction, and excited about the guys that we have coming in. And we've signed 4 guys that will join our team next year, and obviously continue to recruit for the future.
Okay, Rodney, let's talk a little bit about Alabama's basketball recruiting. We know there have been some losses with Jemison and Knox. We've talked a lot about that. It looked as though this recruiting class for the upcoming fall was not going that great. Only a couple of early signees, and Charles Hankerson and Trevor Relaford. Relaford, a point guard from Kansas. Hankerson, a shooting guard from Miami. But then in the spring period, Grant added Kendall Durant, a 6'3" shooting guard from junior college. And, of course, Jason Carter was a nice pickup, 6'8", 230-pound power forward. And now the 7'1", 250-pound Engstrom. And on paper right now, all of a sudden, this is a good-looking class.
Well, nice mixture of size and athletic ability, Gary, in the guard spots.
Indeed it is. And, of course, the recruiting season for next year is off to a terrific start for Grant and company, with 2 of the top 5 players in the state of Alabama already committed. So Anthony Grant, we know he's a good basketball coach. We know he's got a system that can win. I think some people were a little bit concerned about the recruiting, but as of right now, it looks like those recruiting concerns are diminishing as we speak.
Oh, no question about it. And then you look at further ahead, Gary, to next year, and he's certainly already off to a good start.
All right. Well, coming up later in the show, we'll talk more about Coach Grant and let you hear what Louisville coach Rick Pitino had to say about him and how he thinks Grant is one of the best young coaches in the country. But first, let's talk some football and football recruiting. Rodney, let's update the viewers on some prospects, beginning with a young man that was in last week, one of the most highly rated linebackers in the entire country, Curtis Grant out of Richmond, Virginia.
Had a great visit, Gary, here. I think he spent a lot of time with Philip Sims, who is also a native of the state of Virginia, and I understand that Curtis had a tremendous visit. I text messaged with him some. You know, Gary, a lot of people think he's going to end up at Virginia Tech, but I'm not so sure that he wants to stay in state. In fact, I'd say right now Alabama, Florida, and Michigan are probably his top 3.
You know, even when defensive end Lonnie Gosha was committed to Florida State, you had an inkling that Alabama was going to be in the mix. The Tide is right there, but now there seems to be a new player. Georgia's made a move.
Yeah, Georgia's probably his leader right now, the leader for Lonnie Gosha. Alabama's still certainly in the mix, recruiting him very hard. Again, let's not forget that Alabama is recruiting a lot of defensive linemen. So you're going to lose a few, but Alabama's going to do very well on the defensive line.
If you're an NFL football fan, this next name might sound familiar. His dad, longtime NFL player, Todd Pete, another defensive lineman out of Arizona. What's up with Alabama and recruiting Arizona?
Well, and I told you they're in on a lot of defensive linemen. Todd Pete Jr., again, you mentioned his brother, or his dad played with the Raiders. He has a brother, Gary, who is a junior who's going to be a star offensive lineman, Andrus Pete. And Todd Pete's going to visit here next month, come to the camp in July, and I think it's Alabama and Stanford and Arizona State are probably his top 3. But Alabama, you know, a lot of people say, well, he'll probably end up at Stanford or Arizona State since it's in Tempe. Watch out for Alabama.
You've written a lot about Nick Snoop Brazel on your site, TiderInsider.com. You know that he really likes Alabama. He likes Ole Miss, but really a lot of pressure in the state of Mississippi for him to go to Ole Miss. What's the latest?
Well, I think if he were anywhere else but Batesville, Mississippi, 25 minutes from the Ole Miss campus, that Alabama would get Snoop Brazel. That's the way I feel. That's how much he likes Alabama. But there's a lot of pressure on Snoop Brazel to end up going to Ole Miss, and I think, you know, we'll see what happens. Wouldn't be surprised if he takes another visit here pretty soon. He was here recently, had a great camp here, so great player, no question about it.
Tight end Nick O'Leary out of Palm Beach, Florida, has a certain amount of notoriety just because he's Jack Nicklaus's grandson. But make no mistake, that's not why he's being recruited by major schools like Alabama. He's one of the top tight end prospects in the nation.
No doubt about that, Gary. And Alabama, Georgia, Florida State, Miami, those types of schools are very strongly in the mix with him. And I think when it comes down to it, Miami is going to be very difficult to beat, as well as FSU. But he had a tremendous visit to Alabama. Alabama's right there, right in the thick of it.
And another tight end a lot closer to home, just down the road from Tuscaloosa, David Reeves out of Greensboro seems to have come out of nowhere, but you say that he's been on Alabama's radar for some time.
Well, we had a story on him last week, actually, Gary. He's coming to camp in July, and a lot of people don't know about David Reeves, but a tremendous prospect, a great athlete. You see the size there. He's already been over to the Mississippi State camp. They offered him shortly after he left. Again, he wants to earn that scholarship offer from Alabama. We'll see what happens when he comes to camp next month.
All right, Ronnie, good updates as always. And still to come on the big show tonight, some big-name coaches were in town this past week, including former Florida State head coach Bobby Bowden. What does the coaching icon think of Nick Saban and the Tide's chances of repeating as national champions next season? We'll let you find out. Plus, we'll be taking your phone calls and getting to your emails. As always, the number doesn't change, 205-348-WVUA. That's 348-9882. Or you can email us at TITV@WVUATV.com. But up next, tragedy struck former Alabama defensive coordinator Joe Kines and his family on Monday. The coach's only daughter was killed in a car accident. We'll update you on the story, have the latest on this tragedy when Tider Insider TV continues after this.